Hello. Hello, hello. Can you hear me? We're streaming. I'm going to check, see if the volume is good. Let us see. Let us pray. I don't know where to find it. I do not know where to find it. Here it is. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds great. All right, guys. First thing we got to do, link to people. Just give me one moment. Alrighty, ready. We're good. People have been linked. The links have been sent. I'm looking good in my beanie, which I don't usually wear. Never really wore before. It's not hiding a bald spot. I'll tell you that right now. I know my hair is shorter than normal. I got a haircut kind of recently. What can I say? So this is a discussion of Chapter 7 of ZATCH Bell 2. And if you're watching this video after the fact, after the stream, sorry, at the beginning is taking a while here. Don't think I'm going to start the discussion quite yet because no one's in the chat. And what's the point? No one's in the chat. Normally, thankfully, I have at least one person coming in. But, you know, if no one comes in, I probably will just start, but I would like to wait a little. This is not my normal backdrop. This is a really boring backdrop with some like dents in the wall. The place I live in isn't that great. And the reason that this exists and is happening is because I had a setup where it was a nice view of my room from the other side of this desk I'm sitting at right now. But I had to turn everything around because I had a job interview. So I said, I can't, it's just like if I have the option to just have the backdrop be my wall, as opposed to a room that is, you know, I mean, it's not exactly messy, but there's a lot of stuff, then I should probably take that. Now, I, who am not really used to doing video calling too much, didn't really think like, oh, they have backdrops now these days. You can just do backdrops. How was that? I didn't think of that. So I probably should just turn it around again, because even if I did, for whatever reason, have another professional call, which probably won't happen because I have a new job that I'm pretty happy with, I could just use a backdrop. That's about all the preamble I have. There's some stuff I want to get to at the end of the stream, but I kind of like to save that. Just a little updates on my survey that I'm doing, which in my opinion was a big success, but I can't really say that it was a success until I actually post results, which are taking a lot of time to compile. And I've worked hours on this, compiling the results. Several hours. It takes way longer than I thought. That's coming soon. Not making any promises of when, but it is the weekend, so we will see. What else while we wait? I've been watching a little Ultraman. That's been fun. Pretty entertaining. It's just cool to see how I'm really glad I watched Ultra Q first, which is sort of the first show in that franchise, which was actually sort of a Japanese Twilight Zone with a lot of big monsters because that was what was popular at the time. And then they said, hey, let's make it a little less spooky. Let's have even more monsters. Let's make it appeal to kids more. And Ultraman was created after that. So I've watched, I think, 4 episodes of that. One of them in particular was very good with a monster called Naranga. And the reason I'm going through Ultraman is basically only so I can see Shin Ultraman, Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi's movie, when that releases here in the States. And I can understand it when I see it. I can understand the context, the historical context. I'd understand the movie no matter what, I assume, and I assume they want people to get it. But I mean, if you just watch the whole intro to that movie, which they posted like the first minute, it's all Ultra Q references, just a ton of Ultra Q monsters, one after another, after another, after another. And so it's cool. Now that I watch Ultra Q, I'm like, hey, I remember that thing. I remember that guy. And it's going to be the same with Ultraman. I like to have that basis. And I've been interested in Ultraman for a while. Tokusatsu is sort of an interesting thing to me. And I'm especially interested in kind of the evolution of it. It was really cool to go through the Godzilla series and see how the special effects evolved over time in really cool ways. And, sometimes they got the balance just right. Like with one of the best Godzilla movies, fans call it GMK, Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. It has another subtitle too. It's a really long title. Giant Monsters All Out Attack, I think. And I mean that the balance is just right of how the effects look and the mix of live action and the suitmation, as I call it. And it's a really great piece of work. It's one of the best ones. So Ultraman, I'm kind of interested to see that evolution again if I were to continue the franchise after finishing this first series. Because this is a TV show, so the budget is much lower than something like Godzilla. And you can tell. You can tell that Ultraman. You can also tell that Ultraman has an increase in budget over Ultra Q. So you're already seeing kind of some differences, larger scope, more shots. There's just like a lot more shots of like things happening and like destruction and things. And it's really cool to think of it back then because it was really just, there weren't a bunch of tokusatsu shows. And you could say there were a bunch of tokusatsu movies, but in reality, I think a lot of those movies and definitely all the shows were done by like a pretty small group of people. And one of the main people was Eiji Tsuburaya, who was in charge of special effects for Godzilla and then went on to create Ultraman. So it's cool to imagine like it's probably a relatively small group of guys kind of led by Tsuburaya who are, passionate about special effects and really want to make this stuff look really good. And just saying, what kind of monster can we make next? How can we take this old suit and turn it into a new suit? How do we make this model of a town look realistic when it's destroyed? And like a big thing that comparing the early Godzilla movies to Ultra Q and Ultraman, a big difference is these composite shots. And reading up on the history of Ultra Q, some kind of a deal was made that I think it was something like Tsuburaya agreed to like have the show have a sponsorship or something like that. If they would buy him a specific printer, which I think was like a printer that printed film that he could use to make composite shots. So, you would shoot the background and you would shoot the foreground and then you would combine them. And he uses those a lot in Ultra Q because he had this new toy to play with, and they continue in Ultraman. So that's cool. It's cool to see and kind of know the history of that. These people were breaking ground like every day in special effects, you could say. And if I was to continue the franchise, I might, go maybe jump 10 years and see, what's been going on since then. I know there's some pretty famous Ultraman shows. I know Taiga I think, is one of the more well-known ones. I don't know when that was. I think Ginga is another one that I know. Some of the later Ultramen look weird though. Their designs are too busy. I would say I gotta get to ZATCH Bell. I'll get to it after this. And I'll put it in the description when the ZATCH Bell discussion starts for people who are watching later. But I would say, like, if I was to design a new Ultraman, you gotta keep the design minimalist because he's already weird looking. His design is already kind of a little unsettling. And then the later Ultramans, they just added a bunch of like horns and all the kind of crazy stuff to him. I just like smudged my glasses up real bad there somehow, just by doing that. I would just like change the coloring up and like change the shape of the eyes, of the head slightly, but don't add stuff. That's not cool. Okay, that's the Ultraman discussion. So we are going to get to ZATCH Bell. I hope we get some people in the chat because it's always great to have people who you can bounce ideas off of. Really wonderful. Okay, so let's get to it. We're going to get into chapter 7 here. Let me I'm going to make this in like a couple separate windows so because I know the lighting for my computer is going to like mess up my face. This is good. So, chapter 7, arguably the best chapter of ZATCH Bell 2, but definitely the most chapter of ZATCH Bell 2. Not in page length, but just in the amount of stuff that is in here. We're going to get to all of it. We're going to attempt to get to all of it. We begin with Wade shattering his core. It's held on his chin, shatters, and he sort of explodes in a puff of smoke. Gil's pretty stunned. Very stunned. We got a whole page devoted to how stunned he is. And he's going to use ice magic, whether he plans to use a spell or plans to use the sorcery on himself, which might kill him. In an attempt to kill ZATCH and Kyo, he's stopped by a mysterious voice that tells him you can't use any more of this power. I think it's a little silly. Clearly they have a lot of these little spell bottles. And as Gil says, ZATCH is the king. We got to stop this guy. But his boss is his boss. His machinations are an enigma, and the boss teleports him away in sort of a technological-looking teleport. There's going to be, a lot of teleportation in this year. A lot of travel between worlds is going to become a big thing in later chapters. I think we're absolutely going to see Kyo and probably not just him go into the Momoda world and beyond. And then we get a page that a lot of us have really been looking forward to. I think it was a moment that was done in a really interesting way, where ZATCH leaps on Kyo and hugs him. Ever since he's returned from the dead, we've sort of been waiting for like a real moment between ZATCH and Kyo, whether that be funny or whether it just be a conversation or whether it be emotional like this. And this is emotional. It's a little funny at first. But ZATCH is very emotional because he had, almost lost hope. Despite what he said to Zelly and them, it's hard to maintain hope. But Kyo is always reliable. And whatever corner ZATCH gets into, he thought, I know Kyo will help. I know he'll be able to help. And he did. So ZATCH is very emotional about that. He's crying, but we don't see his eyes. We see Kyo, but we don't see ZATCH. And I think that's an interesting choice. I don't entirely know why Raikou did it that way. Because ZATCH Bell is a series obviously known for people crying. We've seen that a fair amount in ZATCH Bell 2 so far. We always see everyone's faces. This time, we're hiding ZATCH's kind of pure emotions. I don't really get it. I just like to know why Raikou did it that way. I don't really know. But we're gonna continue. So later on, that's something that is interesting about this chapter is that like there's really no like it's like we gotta get going to these scenes, man. There's like no transition, you know what I mean? There's no little conversations as people are walking to places. There's no nothing. We get a shot of the orphanage, a shot of Zatch sleeping soundly, and the girl, I think Rania was her name, playing with his cloak, and Zelly and Olmo trying to stop her. And then they're back at the ruins. Let's go. Let's keep moving. And this is a very exciting scene, one of many in this chapter. We learn that Kyo is able to sort of revive the stone books with the pages from the Red Book. And he makes a bunch of new white Mamoto books. They're no longer stone, but they are white. The pages are all blank. So Kyo was talking about he's like using a daisy chain of book pages where he revives a book, then takes a page from that to revive the next book. I think that's what he's saying. It's kind of weird that he's talking about how the pages would eventually run out because I feel like there was something. You know what? I am. This is a meme. I'm thinking of the Death Note. I'm not thinking of the Zatch Bell spell book. Oh, the meme continues. The Zatch Bell Death Note memes. Because the Death Note has infinite pages. It never really runs out. It'll always just have like kind of the same amount. You can tear one out, you'll come back later and find that it's back somehow. There's a new page. And that was never how the books in Zatch Bell worked, I don't think. There was never any confirmation that they had infinite pages, so